Folks, thank you very much for coming out tonight. Welcome to Lanpher Memorial Library. I want to say a big thank you to Amy Olson and appreciate Amy's support for opening up the spaces tonight. But also, if you're not familiar and connected with the library, Amy has really been at the forefront of reminding all of us that our library is not only a great place to get information and books to learn, but also to be a real community resource. And certainly during our community's response to COVID, the library here then kind of sparked interest across our whole county and really, I think, shed a new light on the role that our libraries can play in our community. So Amy, I should say thank you for hosting and remind you to please continue to support all the great things happening here as we hear about other libraries that are in jeopardy these days. Yeah. But we're not here to talk about libraries tonight, but want to learn more about what's happening with Lamoille Community House and continue some conversations that have begun collectively and individually as the community house looks to move to a new space. And so very excited to be able to do that. And folks, we've got sort of a plan and agenda for tonight, but really looking for this to be a conversation for folks to share questions, concerns, to learn a little bit more, to hear about plans and next steps, and to hear about experiences that folks have had. Obviously, Lamoille Community House is not a new entity in our community. And in full disclosure, I should just mention that many years ago, I was a part of the board for the Lamoille Community House, thanks to my daughter, who at 12 years old was very concerned that she was discovering that there are people who don't have a place to live. I'm not sure who that is. And with her prompting, I got involved, and she and I did some overnights when the shelter was first beginning in our community houses of worship. So just to share and full disclosure of what my connections are. So tonight, but it's a chance to hear from all of you and to get a chance to hear from Kim Annisberger, the Executive Director for Lamoille Community House, and her right-hand support here, Nicole Chauvin. So thank you both. And I know we've got some board members here and other supporters, so appreciate you coming out as well. And really appreciate folks from the community coming out, especially on a Friday night. So real quick, just sort of we've got just some guidelines. Pretty straightforward here, folks, but just, so good. This is an informational meeting, so it's a chance for all of us to learn, and really just asking folks to be respectful. And hopefully that, doesn't need too much definition, but we ask that folks, raise your hands before asking a question, and really want to keep the questions relevant to this transition and what's happening for the Lamoille Community House. We don't know how many questions folks might have, but we're going to try to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to participate. We do have some folks online with us via Zoom, so when we do move to the portion of the meeting where we're going to open things up for comments and questions, we'll start with our Zoom folks first, and then move to you all who are in this space. Also, so if you want to get more information, if you're not already connected, there's an opportunity to sign up and leave your email address, and then you can stay connected and get information. And I think Amy has got a little sign-up list over here. So if you're not already getting information and would like to, check in with Amy, and we'll make sure to get you added. And in terms of the flow here in the agenda, pretty simple and straightforward. Kim is going to take us through some slides and share some information. We're then going to open things up for neighbors of the current location or folks who are connected and then connected to the current location to share comments or questions that they might have. And then we'll open things up for everyone in terms of a question and answer opportunity. So it's pretty straightforward. Most of the time will be dedicated towards hearing from you all, but we'll start with Kim and then we'll take things from there. So. Come on in. Plenty of seats, and we're just getting started.
All right. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for coming out.
Good.
Okay,
yeah,
so
thank you.
Kim, I think that covers things. So again, folks, thank you so much for coming out. I'm going to turn things over to Kim Annisberger.
Thank you.
Kim, I'll be over here.
Yeah, enjoy yourself on that seat. I asked earlier if I could just.
Here, so.
I mean, I'm not going to bring up your knee.
Nope.
Sorry. You having your legs up all the time. Anyway, I was going to say earlier, I wanted to just talk from there, but people are making me stand up here. So sorry. Like you said, I just want to point out the sign up sheet over there is not just for us to blast you with our newsletter. We won't send you our newsletter unless you sign up for that. It's just so I can send you these slides and any of the other documents that I refer to when I'm talking about. So I'm going to talk about our guest expectations and rules, which I have a pile of paper copies here, and then other procedural documents that we have for the organization. And I can send you copies of that. But I need your emails to do that. That goes for the Zoom people too. You can put your email in the chat if you want any of that documentation or a copy of this slideshow that also has links embedded into it. So I will just start now. Just starting with, I really am upset that this little thing is hiding part of what I'm saying. But anyway, this says a little quick history of LCH and our mission. So our mission is to offer shelter, security, and hope to people experiencing homelessness. We treat everyone with dignity. We provide them a bed, food, showers, connection to services, a safe place to discover their path to stable housing. It was, like Greg mentioned earlier, a grassroots organization that was established in 2017 when there was a especially brutal night. And then the doors of many houses of worship were open to let people sleep in there so they wouldn't be out in the cold. So this says that you can't see LCH's role in the system of care. So we are one of many homeless shelters in the state of Vermont, and all of the shelters in Vermont are funded through the Office of Economic Opportunities Housing Opportunity Program grant we call the HOP grant. This for us covers about 65% of our budget, and the rest is fundraised or comes from other small project related grants. Like we have a little grant to buy e-bikes, we have a grant for technology, things like that, but mostly it's OEO HOP grant, and then it's fundraised money. And so like I said, we're one of many partners in the state that addresses homelessness in the state. So addressing homelessness is like a multi-level approach, right? There's not just shelter, but there's transitional housing, there's stable housing. It's a multi-level approach, and shelter is like the bottom rung of a ladder to stable housing, right? It's like getting out of outside. The first thing you do is get to shelter, if possible, and then move on up the ladder. And just acknowledging that shelter doesn't end homelessness, housing does. But shelter is at its core a life-saving service. So we are providing a place for people to stay so they're not outside in the cold where they could possibly die. We keep people safe, stable, and making progress towards their goals, while the rest of us, which some of the people in this room are partners on working on the housing crisis, which is a really big thing. And that's why we work with agencies across the state and the state government to try to come up with solutions on how to solve that. But it's going to take some time. So in the meantime, we need somewhere for people to be. So our rules and staffing structure. Some of the things that I've heard are some concerns or things that people have questions about is like, how do we manage the shelter? How do we structure it? How do we staff it? What goes into that? So I just wanted to make sure that people understood that we have the rules and which we can pass this pile around if people want to peruse our rules and expectations that we have for the guests. Every guest that comes to our shelter has these read to them. We read them with the people. We don't just hand it and say, sign it. We go through each one and make sure that people understand what we're asking. And our guests have to sign these and agree to these terms in order to stay at the shelter. And they're basic things like be respectful, keep your area clean. Other things like not having any substances on the property. You can read, I'm not going to list them all because as you can see, it's not a very short document. But that leads into what we're classified as is a low barrier shelter. So we're low barrier behavior-based shelter. And also I kind of talk fast. So if anybody thinks I'm talking too fast, just like do something and I'll try my best to slow down. It's just how I talk. So our funders, the OEO, want us to be a low barrier shelter. This means that we reduce barriers to people accessing shelter. So barriers can show up in many ways, right? So we don't we don't make people be sober to go to the shelter. We don't make sure that they have a job in order to access shelter. We don't make sure that they're they haven't missed a doctor's appointment in so long to go to the shelter. We don't put up any barriers like that. You don't have to have, a driver's license. We don't put any of those barriers on people because people that are experiencing homelessness often might not have those things. They might not have those things in line because if they've been living outdoors for a while or in unstable housing, it's hard to keep those things in line, right? To keep your belongings, they might get stolen or you might lose something. You're moving from place to place and holding a job and trying to make all your appointments when you don't have a roof over your head is extremely difficult. So we would never tell people that they have to have those things lined up in order to access shelter. And it's kind of the other way around. Accessing shelter hopefully helps people get those things. So we have people that come in that might not have birth certificates or IDs and they really want to work, but you can't really get a job without proof of citizenship, right? So Nicole here, she's always sending me payment requests to buy people IDs. And I'm like, yeah, approved, obviously. We have a fund for that. So we get people IDs and we try to, we pay, go get birth certificates from California and Florida or wherever, if someone is, happened to be born there. But so we do that. I'm trying to make sure I didn't get off track. So the behavior-based part means that people's access to shelter is based on their behavior. So if they're behaving in a safe way and they're, following our guidelines, then they're able to stay. If they're not, then, depending on the severity of what's happening, if, maybe they're not picking up after themselves or they're, having some social issues with other people, which will come in and try to mediate with those situations and create plans to make their stay at the shelter. But if someone's behavior is unsafe for the rest of the shelter, they will be asked to leave. And that could be a variety of things, but it's all based on behavior, regardless of if they're using substances or have mental health issues. It's not really those things. It's the behavior associated if it's not safe. Okay, so our intake process includes a lot of things. It's lengthy, it's invasive, and it takes a while. But we first do an eligibility screening, which we like to do over the phone if possible, in case someone's not eligible. Because then if they show up and we find that they're not eligible, then they have to go back to where they came from, which might not be great. And it's a lot of work to go back and forth. So we have the eligibility screening. These documents that I'm listing are things that I can share. So the eligibility screening form, it also includes the HUD's definition of homelessness, which has 4 different categories. I'm not going to go into all those because HUD talk is not fun for those of you who know what that is. It's complicated and silly, but what it really means is if you don't have a safe place to be. It's really what it boils down to. And other eligibility things are people have to be 18 and up. We don't have children in there. And people have to we have to make sure they're not on our do not admit list. And people who might be on that list are people that might not have been safe in shelter before, or maybe their needs are too great. Like if they have medical needs that we can't support because we're not a medical facility. Then we also do an intake paperwork, which is 6-7 pages long. Then we do a coordinated entry assessment, which is another 5 or so pages. Then we have a goal setting worksheet, a referral screening paperwork. And these are all forms, like I said, I can share with you. So if we're full or we do not meet, they do not meet criteria, we also have a list of other shelters and other in the state that we refer people to. There's also 211 and the GA hotels. So we do our best to try to place someone somewhere else if we can. And all of our staff is trained in de-escalation, trauma-informed practices, housing first, Narcan and substance use identification, all of our policies and procedures, which is another 40-page document that you can look at if you really want to, and our screening process. And we have all of this training kind of as a condensed training before we open the season every year. In October, we have 3 or 4 or 5 or so 3 or 4 hour sessions leading up to the opening of the shelter so we can get everybody ready to go. And then we do some shadowing shifts and stuff like that. But it's not ideal because we have to start over every year. Some of our staff carry on from season to season and we love them for leaving for the summer and coming back. That means a lot to us. But it is harder. We have to start over every year and retrain everybody. So once we're year round, we'll be able to train them, but then like train on top of that and get deeper into those trainings and build upon the knowledge they're learning. So that's another exciting aspect of being year round. And now just to compare the two, just to show you what we're looking forward to and what we're working with right now. Right now we have one staff on at all times with on-call staff nearby. Nicole and I are both 3 to 4 or 5 minutes away. We're open and staffed 24/7, which we didn't used to be the first 3 years, 2.5. It was like pandemic-y, so it's kind of confusing. Which we didn't used to be. We used to open at 4:30 and then close in the morning. We have alarms that get set. We lock the doors at 11 and reopen at 6. We have check-in and out procedures. We have a part-time shelter manager that directly supervises staff. It's Nicole, and she's also the part-time housing navigator. She's both part-time each because we have, 10, 11, 12 people or so. So right now, that's all we need. Once we move, I'm going to flip to the other side real quick. Once we move to the 24/7, year-round facility, we'll have a full-time shelter manager and a full-time housing navigator. So we'll have 2 full-time positions to help with those things. Right now, we have one small, very crammed office with a round table in it that takes up too much space. And a bed that our overnight staff sleeps on and a computer. And this is where service providers come in to meet with our guests. It's where our staff will meet with guests when they do intake or if we need to have a conversation about something privately. That's where we do that. Once we move to the new facility, we'll have 4 office spaces, I believe. I'm trying to count, picturing it in my head. 2 of them being upstairs and one of them that will be designated for service providers. So we'll have technology as well to help people use those offices, and it's going to be so much better than than the little office we have now, because it'll provide a space where people can meet with someone and they don't have to kick someone else out of the room. It'll just be more well-rounded. Right now we have 1 male dorm and 1 female dorm. So not only is that not the most dignified way for people to sleep, they're sleeping in cots 2 to 3 feet away from each other. It's not the most comfortable thing. We often are trying to help people get more blankets to soften the cots because they're not the most comfortable. And it's, you're in a room with 5 or 6 other people or more, and you don't have privacy. You're sleeping on a cot. Your belongings are put in totes. We're really looking forward to everybody having their own room and real beds. We're very excited about real bed, the dignity that will come with sleeping on a real bed, and having a dresser to put things in, and just having a little bit of space to yourself. It's also going to be a lot safer if we have another pandemic, or while we're finishing out the rest of this one, or any illness that goes around, right? Someone catches a cold in a shelter, everybody gets it. It doesn't matter if it's COVID or the flu or whatever. And it is the model that the state is looking to go towards. They want us to move away from congregate and move to at least semi-congregate to not non-congregate. And I was like, what's the word for that? Non-congregate. So we will be semi-congregate in that space because there will be shared bathrooms, but people would have their own rooms there. We'll also have more beds, real beds, like I said. Year-round training for staff, I covered that. Gardening program is one of the things we're really looking forward to doing when we have the space for it. Being able to teach people real skills that are both like healing. I don't know about anybody else, but putting your hands in some dirt feels good. It's good for the soul, but it's also a skill that can be transferable for employment purposes. It's empowering.
Survival.
Sorry?
Survival.
Survival, yeah. Exactly. And then I'll go back to the top of that because I didn't mention the top of that year-round part. We'll have 2 to 3 staff on at all times, which is something that we want to do. The zoning for this location limits us to 2 to 3 staff. And our funders are more like, well, can you get away with 1 sometimes to try to, because of the money, so let's squeeze it. And we're like, no, no, we really want 2 to 3 staff on at all times because we're going to have more people. We're open 24/7. It just makes sense to have more staff on. So if we don't get, if they're going to, try to squeeze that money, maybe I shouldn't be saying that kind of stuff. OEO is not going to watch this. It's fine. Nobody send it to them. we'll fund. We have a pretty good track record for fundraising, and we'll be able to fundraise whatever we need to make sure that we have sufficient staff to make sure that the shelter is safe. We'll also have a buzzing in system for people. The way it's set up, there's a front window, so we'll be able to see people coming, and we can buzz the door unlocked and locked and unlocked instead of just walking in and out. Did I miss anything? No, I think that's all of them. All right, who do we serve? So we serve people. Like the bottom line is we serve people. Everybody that we serve is a person. In the last 5 years, we've served approximately 200 people in shelter, but another additional like 220 or so in hotels. And I say approximate because the hotel tracking stuff was a little tricky. We weren't required to track things the same way with some of the funding we had. So we made our own spreadsheets and we kind of tried to cross-reference, and it's really hard when it's not all in the same database. So just being transparent about that, the number might not be exact. But in shelter, we've had 200 people. But overall, we've served more in the hotels as well. So examples of people that we see: young adults. We see people that age out of foster care a lot. That happens often. We have veterans that come in. We have people with developmental disabilities. So that's like learning disabilities, the kind of, if you have anyone in school and know about like IEPs and those kind of things, that's a developmental disability. Mental health disabilities, substance use misuse disorders. Again, with the age range 18 and up, and our oldest guest that we've had so far was born in 1943, so he would be 79. He is, I didn't say would be, he's 79. He wasn't 79 when we worked with him like a year or two ago, but he's 79 now. People who are leaving unsafe situations. So people might be couch surfing, and they might be couch surfing with people who are using a lot of substances, and they need to get away from that. We do see that, people trying to be in recovery and having trouble with the living situations they're in, or being asked to do things that are unsafe in order to keep their housing. That's a reality that we see a lot, and that is really hard. People who work. We have a lot of people working. We have people that they engage with higher ability in working fields, which are programs that help people find employment and get them to employment. People impacted by generational poverty. I know that's a big one. It's kind of a big, kind of blanket statement in a way, but generational poverty is a real thing. When you're born with less opportunity, into a family with less opportunity, it's harder to get out of that. And then people just trying to survive the best way they know how. So, when we read things in the paper about someone sleeping in an ATM booth or whatever and doing these kind of things, they're not doing these things to try to harm their surroundings. They're just trying to survive the night. When it comes to where people come from, so again, this data, a little disclaimer in there. We started tracking where people were coming from, officially in our intake about a year ago, when people started asking us these questions like, do you track this? And we're like, no, that's a great idea. So we did. So we took that feedback. So we have 131 records that we were able to figure out. And Nicole painstakingly went through every intake and tried to retroactively track that as well if we had the information. A lot of people, Nicole was able to say, yeah, I grew up with that person, so I know they're from here. Even if we didn't have an ID on file, she just knows them personally. So that was a good amount of the people she was able to backtrack that way. And then IDs, we scan IDs when people do have them. So I do want to make note that the 4.58% of people that do come from out of state, those are the people that we had copies of their IDs, because this was tracked retroactively. They're none of the people that we're currently working with when we started tracking. So they might have had IDs from, I don't know, let's just say Florida or something, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily from Florida. Most of the times people come back because they have connections to Vermont. They have family here. And it might just be the last time they updated their ID was when they were there. And they've been living in Vermont for 2 years, but they can't afford to get a new ID. And they don't have a car to go along with it anyway. So they just keep the ID that works, if it's not expired especially. But if it is, they might not be able to afford to get a new one. Okay. And then for the percent, I also want to note that some of these were people in hotels too. So the percentage from other counties, when I was looking at the data, looked a little bit heavier on the hotel folks, which when the height of the pandemic, the state was just throwing people around everywhere. I don't know if I should say it like that, but it's kind of what it felt like. And it was hard for us as service providers when people come in from another county and we're trying to connect them to all their support systems, and we don't know who they are, where they are. You know, we're trying to reach these other agencies in other counties. It was a mess. But sometimes, you know, when you're in the middle of a pandemic and you're trying to house people and you choose a mess over nothing. What is this one called? Homelessness, I think, and the Housing First overview. This is just, I think everybody's familiar with the hierarchy of needs. Just trying to bring this like a kind of big picture thing that, you know, shelter is one of our basic needs. When you don't have your basic needs met, you're living in survival mode. And when you're in survival mode, you're unable to do long-term planning, and you make unsafe choices. That's a reality of that.
You do what you got to do and it's not you.
Yep. Yeah. You're not looking at like, how am I going to save up to put a down payment on a home or buy a car, or like, let me strategize on what, like do job searches. You're literally trying, like that part of your brain isn't even activated. Like scientifically, like it doesn't work. Because you're surviving and trying to meet your needs in any way that you can. So it might mean that you might not make the best decision, and you might make decisions that are unsafe and cause harm to yourself and maybe someone else. But when we give people a place to sleep, we're reducing the harm. We're reducing how unsafe they feel. We're making them feel safe. I'm saying it backwards. We're making them feel safe, right?
Stress is one of the words you're looking for there.
Yeah, reducing the stress. Thank you. And when people feel safer, they make safer choices. When you feel unsafe, you make unsafe choices. It's how it is.
It's natural.
And so the Housing First model basically says, you know, meet that need first, the basic need, and then address the other barriers that might need help and that might need addressing after. Because once you're able to relax and that part of your brain can calm down and the other one can start being activated, then you can start addressing anything that might be a barrier. And we apply that same model to shelter. And that's why we are low barrier, because it follows like an evidence-based practice of housing first. And this one says, we have a housing crisis on the top. You can see crisis. So anyone who's ever heard me talk about this, I always say the same thing, that I never blame anyone for their own homelessness. I blame the system that we live in. And the housing crisis specifically right now is what is driving this issue the most. So what causes homelessness? Generations of inadequately addressing homelessness to begin with, and housing insecurity, like improper measures taken to actually make a change when it was maybe even more manageable back, 20, 30 years ago.
We were just talking
before
about
I was
that.
born.
When my mom was growing up, like it was nothing.
Yep.
Like we moved from, to find housing. Now, I don't care how much money we have, it's finding safe, adequate housing that, for each of us. And we were just having this conversation. I'm like, I remember moving around as a kid. There was no problem.
Yep.
Finding a place.
Yeah, I moved around a lot as a kid too, and I was a little housing insecure myself, but like we found an apartment. There was always an apartment we could try to get into.
Find something.
And so there's also a lot of housing discrimination and inequitable housing opportunities. So although we have a small BIPOC community in Vermont, they are facing a higher rate of discrimination for housing opportunities. The housing crisis, we have like less than a 1% housing vacancy rate. Skyrocketing real estate prices at every level, every socioeconomic level is like where you could afford a house before is not where you can afford a house now, right? So this is affecting like the middle class, the missing middle that they talk about a lot. So low income families and middle class people are having trouble finding homes for themselves that they can afford. Which means that then they're buying up stock for that previously could have been affordable to lower income people. And it just goes down and down and down and down until the people at the lowest level housing then have nothing, and then they end up homeless. During the pandemic, especially, a lot of second and third home buyers coming in and buying things and turning them into Airbnbs, short-term rentals. It's a hot topic. And so that also impacts this. Again, generational poverty, redlining, there's a history of that in Vermont as well. And inadequately funding other systems of care. So hospitals, psychiatric facilities, assisted living, recovery homes, all of these other human services are also inadequately funded. And when people are not being supported in these programs and they fall through those cracks, they end up in shelter too. So it's kind of a mess. If I can say that too. I'm saying a lot of things that I'm like, it's true. It's a little bit of a mess out there, and we're all, working to trying. A lot of us are trying to work together to try to clean up this mess. And the last two that I put in bold, I think, are just kind of the underlying mental models that drive why our systems, our government, everything has not put in the funding, has not invested in these things for generations, is that there is a severe and real lack of value placed on those living in poverty. There is a bit of classism embedded in our systems, right? And embedded in the media that we see and everything like that. So changing that mindset might help the money flow through as well, and then maybe addressing the issues. It's a little bit of my optimism. And then the system that doesn't properly provide support to those who lack natural supports, which I kind of went over with the other categories. In my ideal world, nobody becomes homeless. If something happens, there's a group that comes in and helps figure out what to do, keeps you stable, and then or moves on, or maybe assesses if a different kind of living situation is what you need. One day we'll get there. So, and then this is the safety concern section. So we've heard a lot of concerns. I reviewed the select board meeting from, what was the date? The 28th, last day of February. And I also had some concerns sent to me in emails and the survey, and some of the top ones, which I didn't write all of them in, but we can discuss them here tonight. But the main ones that we're seeing are sex offenders were brought up a lot. And I just want to give you guys some data on that. We've had one person in the 5 years that we've operated out of the yellow house that was a registered sex offender. Our intake process does include asking about criminal history. So we have a disclaimer to our guests that we read that we are going to ask you these questions about your criminal background. It's not necessarily going to keep you from accessing a bed, but if you do not disclose your information and we find out, we may ask you to leave. So it's really important that people disclose any history that they have, and people are usually very open with what they have going on. And that has follow-up questions about probation officers, any court dates coming up. And a lot of that also is mostly to help guide them through that. And so that we know what they can and cannot access as when it comes to housing or services. And, so someone might be referred to the restorative center to help with their upcoming court date or reentry program or whatever that might apply to their situation. So we collect that information to see how we can guide them from their current situation to, becoming more stable and making sure that they show up to their court appearance, and they make that meeting with the Restorative Justice Center because, they might forget. So we get those releases signed. We make sure we, wake them up. Hey, you got a meeting today. Come on. So that's a big part of why we have that part in there. When it comes to sex offenders specifically, though, I want to make sure everybody has the information about how to register your personal address, your email address. You can put it into the website and they will email you and alert you if someone is moved into your neighborhood. And I actually just did this because I was testing it out and I hadn't done it, and it emailed me right away the five or six people that are already in Hyde Park that are registered sex offenders. So I have an email with all their pictures right there, or their names, and I can click and see their picture. So if someone moves into the shelter who is a registered sex offender, they have to let their PO know that they have moved. That goes into the system, and then if you're signed up, it will alert you that someone new has moved into your area, and it'll give you their picture and their description. And it says what the crime is that they committed, if they're high risk, if they're compliant with their PO, all of those things. Yep. So that is an online resource that everyone can use. And this is a link that you can click when I send you the slides. Don't forget to sign up for that. Drugs and alcohol was brought up. People have asked if we can drug test people before entry or not let people in if they are actively using in their lives. And like I said earlier, we are funded as a low barrier shelter. We can't do that. We would lose our funding and we wouldn't be able to serve the people that we serve. We are trained in de-escalation. We are trained in a lot of things like that. And we make referrals to recovery services all the time. So someone who comes in and might be struggling with a substance use disorder might not want services right away, and they might be struggling with something and they come in, it's behavior based. If they're chill and they're following the rules, there's no reason to ask them to leave just because they have a substance use issue. One of the things I don't know if I wrote in here or not, but no, I didn't. Oh yeah. People who use deserve a place to sleep as well. So that's coming back to, dignity, serving people with, just letting people know that they all deserve somewhere to be.
Everybody deserves a chance in life. I mean, I've been in recovery. I've relapsed, been in recovery, relapsed. I never, ever thought I'd be. I mean, I owned a $500,000 home without drugs, working my ass off every day. I never expected to be where I am.
Yep.
Those
And
unforeseen circumstances.
you guys are now rebuilding.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then, so walking on the road has been something that people have been concerned about. The road leading up to Clark Drive Center Road. We will discourage walking at night. Is one of the things we can do is talk to people about the safety of walking on a road at night. We talk about safety issues with our guests, no matter what they are. If someone's talking to us about something they might do, in their lives, we're like, hey, is that a good choice? We have those discussions with people about anything all the time, but we are willing to, stock up on flashlights and reflective vests if that helps, because we can't really force people to stay in if they are going to leave for, if they want to go somewhere. But we do anticipate having less walking happening because of all the transportation things that we're embedding into our program. So we have the RCT microtransit rides, which is basically a free Uber is the easiest way to say it quickly. That's like dial a ride and you get a ride and you go.
We don't need to walk. We can walk in the garden.
And then we'll have the e-bikes, which can put on winter tires. I found out recently. So they do have winter tires. I know there were concerns about, how do you ride an e-bike in the winter? But I guess technology is pretty cool these days. And then we just got some funding to purchase a van. We just confirmed some funding this week. So we can purchase a van by the end of the fiscal year. So if you know anyone selling a van, let me know. Under 60,000, that's our limit.
Yeah, right.
But so we will have transportation embedded in, and we anticipate it getting used a lot. The RCT thing is a really big deal because it's a pilot program that they're piloting in different parts of the state, and us utilizing it is actually going to help them prove that it's needed too, because it's going to help increase the ridership. So it's a win-win on both sides. Camping, there's concerns of tents being put up on our property or neighboring properties, and we do not anticipate that happening. We've never had a tent here. We wouldn't allow a tent on our property. We wouldn't be legally zoned or allowed to anyway, and even if we were, we wouldn't do that. And I mean, I'm guessing the assumption is if we don't have space, someone will have a tent. Not that they would choose a tent over an indoor bed, but yeah, we don't anticipate that happening. And and that's something that if for some reason it did happen, we would address right away. So data on police calls. So I was given some data by the Sheriff's Department that showed 44 calls in the last 5 years, in contrast to the 8,015 calls in all of Hyde Park. And because we share the garages, the address is the same as the garages for the Sheriff's Department. Some of those calls, the 44 that we have, were actually not even us. They were things like a search warrant, We never had a search warrant. Like, we never had a warrant presented to us to search something. So I'm guessing they had items from a search warrant in their garage that they were looking at. I don't know what it means exactly. Can't tell you. But I know that we cross-referenced our own internal communication log and looked up every date of the things that they sent us and to compare to see what these events were, because some of them I was like, I don't remember the cops being there. Because like any time the police are involved, we both know. We probably know, we have every incident in our head because it doesn't happen very often. And if it is, something that's an elevated situation, then we would know. I did want to also just point out, just because I found it kind of sweet, is that when I was looking through our log at one of the dates, one of the reports on the police report that they gave us was called Found Property, which is in reference to when one of our guests actually found a purse across the street and returned it to the police department. And that was registered as a call to us. So I just thought it was worth pointing out that even out of these 44 calls, some of them are not really things to worry about. Another call that we had maybe this year was someone, internal conflict between two guests arguing about something, and the police didn't come to the call, but they did answer it and say, like, you're having an argument, like, figure it out, because like it didn't warrant police to come. But Nicole actually responded and de-escalated the situation herself. So we really rely on staff like Nicole and myself to come and de-escalate situations, because we have these skills to do it. Not that the police don't, because I know we have one on the call. Maybe you guys are great too. But we also, we're trained in different ways probably, and we bring different skills that are useful on either end. But yeah, we do want to make sure that everybody feels safe and address concerns and have these conversations, and we want to do that, but we just don't want to do it at the cost of the dignity of the people we serve. So the things that we wouldn't be able to do is give you all the files of everyone that is in the shelter, or anyone who's asking, not you all, sorry. We can't, there's confidentiality rules around shelter. We have to respect people's privacy. It's about dignity. It's about, it's about dignity, really. And it's also the law. It's also not just dignity. It's also the law for the funding. So it's another, we wouldn't be able to do those kind of things, but we are open to having conversations and addressing things if they come up. And last slide. Oh, actually, there's one more, but I'm not going to actually talk about the other one. But this is the last one that I'm going to talk a lot at. Just why Forest Hill and moving forward is what that says. Our search started almost 2 years ago when the pandemic unveiled that the growing need was there, and we really, really needed a year-round facility. We had people in the summer, even this summer, we had someone pass away from the heat exhaustion. It was in the paper. Everybody probably knows about it. It was a very sad event. We explored many properties before landing on this one. It's been a very tireless and difficult search. We'd find something and it'd be gone a week later. You guys know the housing market right now. Nothing is staying for sale very long. What makes this location ideal besides the actual formatting, the structure, which is very ideal because it has individual rooms. It has physically very ideal space. The other thing that makes it ideal though is the fact that the funding, which I'll talk about in a second, from VHCB takes a long time to acquire. And then all of the feasibility work and the environmental studies and the construction and all of the things, and to bring the building to a code that VHCB approves takes a long time. And a lot of sellers would be like, I'm not waiting 6 to 9 months while you do all your little granty stuff and I could just sell my house for more. Why would I do that? And this is a seller that's willing to do that. And this is a seller where it benefits him to do that because it gives him more time to work with the residents he has now and finding them a new placement. So it really is very harmonious in that way. The Vermont Housing and Conservation Board is the VHCB that I just mentioned. So they fund the capital costs. And like I said, they have set expectations for affordable housing and shelter locations. And we've had to prove to them the viability of this location and why it's a good location by, addressing the transportation stuff mainly, which we did successfully and that they found was good. So they would not have approved this if they didn't find it a feasible project. Moving forward, I know that the way we started with this communication was not ideal. I recognize that, and I want us to communicate more. And I think that having a neighborhood advisory committee as a subcommittee of our organization would be a really great way to stay in touch, to have continual conversations. Maybe meets once a month, maybe more at the beginning, more less, adjusting as we see fit, as you see fit, to discuss anything that's coming up, any concerns, to try to problem solve things together. Because I'm not going to claim that I have answers to everything. There's a lot of things I don't know, and there's a lot of things we all don't know. So working together to figure out things would be great. Like if we have concerns about people walking in the lighting, like let's think tank that. Let's talk about it. Let's problem solve. So I would love that if we could have some kind of neighborhood advisory committee, and maybe one of the people on there maybe wants to join the board as well. Do a little board recruitment too while I'm at it, because we're always doing that. And then that person could also be a balance to reporting back to the board, so that what I'm bringing back to the board isn't just me, but also the committee too. So that way we have equal representation, bringing back this information to our board of directors as needed. And then just another invitation to help and get involved. Like the homelessness and the housing crisis is a real thing that impacts everybody, not just those without homes. Like it really does. And if we are able to somehow together help lift the people that are suffering the most at the bottom, everybody else raises up too. And when we're able to give people opportunity, they're able to contribute to our society and our economy and join the workforce and do all these things that help all of us. So, it's not something that we can do on our own. And we would never pretend that we can do it on our own, because we can't. We have to have community involvement. We have to have it from every sector of every type of entity. So getting more people involved would be great, because like I said, we want to work ourselves out of a job. We don't want to have to exist. We want to end homelessness. And if we can do that, we wouldn't need to be here. And that'd be great. And I'd like to have an open house in late March, early April. I haven't had a date yet. I will send it to the email list again. Maybe we should just pass that around to just like kind of more, not like just kind of motivate you to sign up to get all of this. And then the last one, which I'm not going to go over all this because it's a lot of links. But these are just a bunch of articles on the housing crisis, historical housing policies that have led to where we are now. And then I know some people asked about property values. I tried finding some things. Other people tried finding some things for me in Vermont. I could not find Vermont specific articles. I found a few that were, no, I didn't find them. That's a lie. Somebody else did and sent them to me. I'm sorry, I lied. Someone sent them to me that was in a meeting about this and said, hey, I found some stuff that might be relevant. And then I linked them there too. So these are all articles. The first two are about trauma and homelessness. The second one I thought was a great read. About how our brain like automatically censors us from seeing this because it's too painful, basically. And that's part of why we don't look at people who are experiencing homelessness, because the suffering is so great. It's hard for us to actually, if we allow ourselves to empathize, it's hard. I'm feeling myself feel it right now. Like it's a lot to carry when you empathize and work on behalf of people that are suffering. There's another one that's I just want to point out the really good ones. They're all good, but there's a Vermont Public one. Where is it? Thank you. Yeah, Vermont Public episode. I was listening to that while working on my slides. It was good. Good listen. So highly recommend. How did I do on time?
7:24.
Wow.
So I think what we're going to do here, we're going to do a transition. So take a moment here if you need to move around, take a breath or two. But what we want to do is we're going to take just a few minutes to hear from what we'll call partners in the shelter. So this might be people who've had experience being at the shelter, neighbors of the shelter, or partners who've worked with folks at the shelter. So we'll take just a few minutes there because we really want to then open it up for the general Q&A session. And so I want to start first, so our folks in Zoom land, If any of you who are partners or connected to the current shelter or the shelter in its current location, if you have comments or things that you want to share, we want to give you the opportunity first. Then we'll see who we have here in the audience here, and then we're going to open it up with Q&A where we'll again go to the Zoom folks first, and then come here. So Nicole, are you seeing anything come up in terms of hands raised or folks who want to share anything from Zoom land before we open things up here?
Not seeing anything in the chat.
Okay.
She'll let you know if she sees it.
Okay, all right, so why don't we go ahead and open things up here then, and then if folks want to get something on the Zoom land, so see, we got Amy putting up 2 different hands. Okay, you must really have something important.
I wasn't like this. I was
Okay.
just kind of gently. Should
Come on
I come up?
Amy
Okay.
Olson, yes.
Amy Olson.
And you don't all have to come up if you want to talk. She just wants.
Right.
She just wants more
This
attention.
is my second home.
Just kidding.
So my third child and my second home is the library. I've been the library director here for 18 years, and I've always, before Lamoille Community House opened, I suspect there were folks who were experiencing homelessness who were hanging out at the library. I suspect this because there were people who were bathing in our sinks. There were people who would fall asleep, and that in itself does not indicate any homelessness experiencing, but it's something that we just suspected. So when we learned that Lamoille Community House was opening less than a minute walk away from a welcoming public building that's open to everyone, I had some concerns myself. So I did 2 things, and the first thing I did, which is kind of like the neighbor advisory committee, which I love that idea, was I reached out to at the time, the leadership, and said, how can we partner with you? And we became partners. We hosted programming together. We provided a space for the board to meet, things like that. And then the second thing I did was I sought out educational opportunities for myself to learn about homelessness and to have a better understanding and a more empathetic approach to homelessness in libraries. And there's a ton of professional development opportunities specifically for librarians because we are open to the general public and we're welcoming to all people. So when Lamoille Community House opened, and they, as you said before, they opened at 4:30 in the afternoon and closed at 8:30 in the morning. And so folks who didn't have a job or somewhere else to go would hang out here at the library. And something I noticed right away that surprised me was, and it shouldn't surprise me, but it did. People who we knew were experiencing homelessness and were guests at Lamoille Community House that were hanging out at the library were using it a different way. They weren't bathing in the sink, they weren't falling asleep. They were hanging out using the library just like any other library patron would, reading books, using the internet, putting together a jigsaw puzzle, just being a member of the library. And the second thing that I noticed that surprised me, but it shouldn't have, was that I knew a lot of people. I grew up in Hyde Park, someone I went to high school with, someone I used to work with at a restaurant, someone who was once a member of my family, someone who was a neighbor, rented an apartment here in Hyde Park, and she had an experience happen to her in her personal life and became homeless. So these are people who are around us and part of our neighborhood all the time. So those are 2 things. Then the pandemic happened, and now that the Lamoille Community House is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we really don't see a ton of people that we know of that are experiencing. Of course, we can't tell for sure, but there's not a ton of that here because they have a safe place that they can stay warm and they can be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I also think that having a place where people who are experiencing homelessness can be all the time, year round, is going to make a big difference in our community as well, and the folks that we see who are being served at Lamoille Community House. And full disclosure, but from my heart, I get asked to join boards all the time, and I actually, my term on a board ended, and I went to Kim and I said, I have time to volunteer on the board of Lamoille Community House. Do you have an opening for me? And they did. So I am a board member now I strongly believe in this organization and the leadership of this organization, which they've been open for a while now. So they've grown and evolved and changed, and it's a very strong group, and they are always seeking out new opportunities to learn and to grow and to be trained. And so I just wanted to share that as a neighbor of Lamoille Community House. They're great neighbors. Thank you.
Okay, go from Zoom, and then I think I saw Clarissa.
Do they want to unmute or do you? Sorry.
So,
No, scroll up more. There we go.
the staff training was mentioned. Are there requirements for certain qualifications or licenses?
Do you want to speak to that, Kim, and then we'll keep going with the.
Yeah, I feel like, that's fine. One of the things I can provide is our job descriptions. We have, like most job descriptions, have qualifications that are desired, but not always required. So we do a lot of the training ourselves. When we interview someone for a job, we're really looking for people who have skills in de-escalation. So we ask a lot of questions about how they handle situations that are hard and how they do in those situations. And just looking for people that have kindness and empathy and that are non-judgmental, because and I know that's not like a thing you get a certificate for in college, but it is important, because if we have people that are judgmental working at our shelter, that can escalate and create more drama. Not drama is not the right word. Conflict. Thank you. More conflict. So we need people that are able to know how to assess situations and know when they need support, and if police are needed, when to call the police. But no, there's not any required specific credentials or licenses that are required for our shelter. And if there were, I think that would be something that comes down from the state, and we would have to follow, and I would hope that they would give us more money for that. I really gotta stop trashing them in this video. The state is great. I love them. Thank you.
We're gonna go with Clarissa next, and then we'll check to see others in terms of partners or folks who have connections to the current shelter, and then we're gonna open things up. So.
Great, I'll keep it quick. Hi everyone, I'm Clarissa, I'm the Executive Director at United Way of Lamoille County. And I want to thank Kim and Nicole for doing such a fabulous job, first of all, presenting a really incredible amount of information that's really hard to get out there. And I also wanted to just let you all know that yes, the community house serves this population, but they are not the only ones in our community that do that. So we have a lot of representatives here. We have representatives from Clarina Howard Nichols Center, we have Lamoille County Mental Health, we have Capstone, all of whom serves this population, including my own organization. Just an example of some things that we do. We have a mobile rural resource navigator who parks here at the Hyde Park Library for 3 hours a week and helps to do resource navigation. So she's currently right down the road from folks who might need those resources. We also are opening a new office space in downtown Morrisville where folks are going to be able to access a variety of resources that way. We support 211 as your local United Way, so 211 is also a resource that is greatly utilized by that. And as part of our office space, our hope is to open up to folks so that we can avoid situations like someone dying of heat exhaustion. So if someone is needing a glass of water or a bathroom, or to be able to just sit and read and get out of the heat, that we can honor that and provide that for them. And I strongly encourage you to reach out to us as United Way. Our job is also to not just provide resources to individuals, but to provide resources to anyone who's asking. So whether it's an organization in our community or just an individual who's interested in knowing where can they help and how can they volunteer, we're a good resource for that. So give us a call, reach out, and we'll try to plug you into somebody who might know, and connect you to what you're interested in. Thank you.
So in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and just open things up for Q&A. Nicole's going to continue to keep an eye on the Zoom, but want to just go ahead and open things up. And I see that finger pointing up, so go back of the room. And if you're comfortable sharing your name and connection, that's...
You don't have to.
I don't care.
Okay.
Go for it. I mean, I know your name. So go ahead.
I'm shy, right?
No, you're so shy.
I'm not.
You're kind of like that.
My name is Sandy Noyes. I live right next door to this, I still call it Clark's. You have to pass my house to get to there. What?
Me too, Sandy.
You have to pass my house to get there. When I hear people talking that they want to put security cameras up in their yards now because of this going up there, that's scary. Mm-hmm. We bought our house, my late husband and I bought our house in 1992. And when the Clarks owned the nursing home, well, first of all, I know people fall into hard times. I know that. I'm not stupid and I'm not blind, I know that. But I also know you have to kick them out of the nest a little too. I know that too. But when the Clarks owned it, there was nothing surprising about us coming home from work and having one of their patients sitting on our front porch. And I'd have to call Mrs. Clark. Have you counted noses lately? She goes, why, is one of them down there? Yep, she didn't even miss them. So when you say you can turn people away, how are they gonna get out of there? They're gonna have to walk? But if you pissed them off, they're gonna get mad at something on their way through, right? And I'm not a poop, I know that, I know, but people get pissed off at things, but I don't want my yard to be the target of it. There's only 3 houses on that road, and that includes that place. Mm-hmm. And the other one is a house up behind us. And we're the ones that are right there by the road for everybody to see. Mm-hmm. I don't like the feeling that people think they have to put up security cameras in their yards now. Maybe you guys don't care, but 31 years living in the same place, I don't like the thought that I have to do that. I don't want to do that. But when you say you're going to turn people away, how are you going to get them out there so that they're not stopping at our houses to destroy things, And I'm not a rich bitch, believe me, I'm not, but I like what I have because I work very hard for it. So
Yeah.
So I want to know how, if you turn away Joe Blow here, what are you going to do with him? Just send him down the road?
Well, depending on the situation, and depending on how they arrived, because a lot of people get dropped off. Hopefully people are calling before they come, and that's the biggest thing, right? And we have gotten good, I will say, at getting people to call instead of just showing up at our door without asking, okay? So that's one thing. I'm not going to say it's never happens. If someone is leaving angrily, we have utilized the police to help bring them somewhere. So if someone needs to get to a hotel or another shelter in another place, we can either utilize the police or we can utilize transportation funds to drive them there. We will have a van, so we will have the option of using that to transport them to another place, which we can do more, like we'll have a van. Sorry, I'm just like clicking that in my brain right now. I'm like, yes, because it's just,
If you can find one.
I will find one. We found one in Massachusetts. We're gonna drive. We're going on a road trip to get a van.
Kind of like,
Yeah, that's the hard part. I have to spend it by the end of June.
Yeah.
That's the hard. I can do it.
Sandy, I will tell you, so the majority of the calls that we use the police for have been to help us remove people who are angry because we are
Or
having
in a
that.
heated situation.
Yeah.
We like, if we have to turn somebody away because we don't have space, they're not mad because they know it's not our fault. We will help them try to find other places to go. They're not angry, they know it's not our fault if we're full. So if we have somebody that's really angry, we will use, that is the majority of what we use the police for.
I know if I'm really pissed off at somebody, I'll walk away first and they don't think I'm mad, but boy, when I get down that
Oh, no,
road,
we
I
know
want
when
to
they're
kick
mad.
the first
We know.
rock that gets in my way,
We know when
So,
they're
but
mad.
that's what we're all worried about. That is what a lot of us in the neighborhood are worried about. We don't want security cameras up, and I don't,
Correct.
and I know kids need shelter. I know moms and dads and granny and grandpas do too, but
Yeah.
kind of shove them out of the nest and have them go find a way. I just think,
I've been out of the nest and now I lost my way.
but we're gonna pick you back up and throw you back in
That's what
there.
we're trying,
That's right. So, and I'm not against people that need the help. I know that people need help, but I don't want people thinking
I'm not
it's
gonna get
security
pissed off
cameras.
and kick over your garbage can if I can.
You gotta find it, the snowman buried
understand
it.
what you're saying.
I will-
Anyway, so that's a big concern, so.
I'm gonna go, Chastity. One more thing I just want to say is that we haven't, at least don't know of any reports of anybody in this neighborhood having that experience after we've turned them away. So people who have had to walk away from here, if they have, which I have trouble remembering how many of those instances there are, but like I haven't had any feedback. We haven't had any feedback from the police department. We asked specifically if there were calls they could give us information on from neighbors about our guests, and they didn't have that information. I'm gonna go to Chastity first, then I'll go to you, Scott.
I was gonna ask you actually, how many times do you really turn people away? You probably don't have to do that very often, do you?
Oh, yeah.
Because
No.
you are low barrier,
It's not
It's
turning
more-
people away, it's when we have to ask them to leave due to behavior.
Gotcha.
That's one,
Okay.
or if we're full.
Yeah,
But
and they're usually.
Hopefully you won't be
calling-
full up there.
Yeah, they're
There's more
usually
beds,
calling
right?
first.
yeah,
So we do ask that people call us first,
Got it.
yeah.
see if we have space.
And
That's how it
people,
works.
and
Okay.
yeah, and people, yeah. So we don't have people really just show up on the door
Right.
unannounced very often.
That's fine.
We most of the time get a call before. So we're hopefully not going to have people walking all the way up there and
Right.
and honestly, most people don't have phones or a data plan to connect phones if they do. So if someone was looking for the shelter and they didn't have a way to GPS themselves there while walking, they wouldn't even know where it is. So they would need a ride there. They would need someone to bring them or to call for directions ahead of time. So we would hope that that's really minimal. And it's one of the things that, if we have our committee, we can keep talking about. And I think one of the things we need to remember is that we're not serving a bunch of dangerous people. Because that's what makes me think of when we say things like we have to put security cameras up, is that there's a pre-assumption that everybody that might be walking by that we might not have room for is going to be angry and violent, when that's not the case.
Most dangerous people I've met in my
Sorry,
past.
hand in the back, and then we'll come up front here.
And then there.
Oh,
Yeah, no.
right here. Okay.
Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, I'm Scott, and a lot of what I had to talk about was the same as what she was touching on. And I want to introduce myself as one of the residents of the Yellow House. And by living there and observing the being down on my luck type of deal is a real struggle. And it's a real deal because I have come from owning my own businesses and being, from schooling and having my stuff together. But, I always heard this, hopefully I can catch a break. There's got to be something. And I can also, I've asked friends and asked family for help at one or more times of my life. And I think everybody in here can sympathize with that as well. But as far as what I wanted to get to was the leaving ugly and having people removed and doing damages to other people's property, I haven't seen any of those attitudes or personality problems from this one. In fact, we have become more of a family unit, connected even closer than family, real family and friends, by being together in this atmosphere.
Having meetings together.
And having, right, and pulling together
Getting
with
ideas
our own,
together.
right,
Getting
exactly.
homes
I have
together.
a personal person here that put me out with my children and got me in a home. And where am I?
Right,
And she's a wonderful person. She was my structure, but I needed that.
So
When
it really-
she was gone, I was lost.
right.
And
So it
if
really does point true to really understanding the horror stories that we hear and see from other structures created in different communities about the shelter. I heard all of them. I read about them. I was scared to death to go into one. And
Me too.
I honestly have grown
Thank you.
a lot maturely by experiencing the love, the trust, the family setting, and the family feeling, not only from staff, but from others that have lived there as well. So it's a real deal. I mean, the staff alone is on. They're in key. They're on top of it.
Thank you very much for sharing both of you. I'm gonna come up front here to Katrina, and then over here, and then see you down there too. Katrina.
Greg and I have known each other for probably 20 years now. I grew up here in Lamoille County, just like Nicole did, and kind of know just about everybody I've crossed paths with. Worked in human services for 20 years in this county, in many different roles and levels from different angles, adults, children, families, in homes, in the office. It's not about pushing people out of the nest to get them to do what they need to do. It's about a housing crisis. It's about our vulnerable populations in our community that we need to take care of collaboratively. We are all human, and we can all end up in these situations. I have been part of this team in Lamoille County for a long time, and I've worked with many of these service providers in different roles, and I'm just so proud of the work that I see that happens and how we all come together, especially during the pandemic. And I just wanted to speak to that because that's going to carry over. It's like we support the shelter, all of these agencies. We meet regularly, weekly, monthly, daily, on the phone, on Zoom, in person. We're all in this together, so. And if everybody can join that, it's just gonna be more powerful.
Right here, and then over here, and then, okay, so right here, right here, right here.
I think you know me at this point, but I'm Saul Costa, so I own a property that borders Forest Hill right now. I also grew up in Lamoille County over in Waterville. First, I just want to say, I really appreciate your responsiveness, especially over this past week. I know myself and a number of other community members have come to you with questions. You've responded overnight even to a lot of those, and so I really love what I'm seeing from this organization. I think the concern that I have is that LCH does not own the property, right? This is leased from an organization. That organization, unfortunately, has intentionally, it seems, excluded the public. We haven't been able to have conversations like this. So a concern that I have is everything that you're saying, or most of it, right? It sounds great. You're definitely working in the right direction. How does that translate over to the organization that actually owns the property? And are there any type of guarantees that we have in terms of the continued level of service that you're communicating here? So if LCH is like, hey, we're gonna kick you out and bring in somebody else because they're gonna have more state funding or whatever it comes down to, what is the guarantee that there's gonna be that carryover of safety and care that you're presenting here today?
That's a great question. I don't anticipate a lot. I don't anticipate them kicking us out because they would then have to find another entity, like you said, that would need to fit in within the zoning criteria to operate a program in that building, right? And that sounds like a nightmare to have to do, and I don't anticipate someone wanting to do that.
And VHCB funded.
And yeah, so VHCB funded this project with money specific to expanding shelter capacity. So they're kind of tied into having to do that. The way that our master lease is going to be written, which we're working on right now, isn't finished yet, is going to say that we're leasing this basically, I don't know the terms, don't quote me on any of this, but the concept is that we're leasing it from them until we solve homelessness. So until the issue is gone. Until everybody has equitable access to housing and we don't need shelters.
Is that like a contractual element of it, or like an understanding?
I can double check that for you to make sure, but it seems like it is what VHCB told us, which is our funders, and they're the ones that tell us what to do. So it is, I could find the contract and see if it's worded that way and see exactly what the wording is and share that information. But the lease, yeah. Yeah.
And I think there was something in the I'm looking at the DRB. There was something in there specifically that said that if we weren't operating it, Lamoille Housing Partnership would have to find somebody else that met the same protocol that we did. That was part of that's in there.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That helps.
Yeah, and I do want to say that, it is us running the program, so we would be the ones you're communicating with. There shouldn't be anything you need to talk to Lamoille Housing Partnership about. I can't imagine. If you think of something, let me know. But we're the ones running our program out of the building.
It may be worth noting that before Lamoille Community House was open, we were the only community in the state that did not have a shelter. And so I don't think there are a lot of folks who are looking to get into the game. It took quite a while for our community finally to the need to become, for people to become fully aware of that need. And I think it's also important to note too, the partnerships. You look around this room, there are a lot of different partners here. So this isn't, while it is one organization that may be in name on a document, it is a community that's really rallied and is also committed to ending homelessness in the community. Okay, we'll keep moving here.
There was another question online, Greg.
Oh, there was, okay.
But I kind of answered it.
Okay.
Somebody asked, said that we were located at the end of a dirt road, a mile from town, and how will people leave, which we kind of talked about, that if somebody showed up and we had to leave, we would make arrangements somehow, either with our van, for them to leave if we weren't able to serve them at that time, if we were full or for some reason. But we do, we have a process, like a procedure thing that we share with partners that we can also share with people, like how people are supposed to access shelter, like call first. It's shared with all of our partners, it's shared with hospital,
the court,
police departments, courthouse. for people coming, that might need to be accessed from the courthouse, it's shared all along there. And that is the ideal, is that they call first to know, and that we know that they're coming and who it is. And if somebody were to show up and need to leave, we would figure out making arrangements with the van, and then on a regular basis, we'll have the van around e-bikes and the micro transit that will be doing the transporting. We will try to eliminate the walking.
And law enforcement if the
If needed,
situation.
yeah.
If it was to that point.
Great. Thank you, Nicole, and thank you for the person online who asked that. So right here, and then I'm gonna come up front.
My name's Jeff Dangle. I did not grow up in Lamoille County. I feel like I'm the first person.
I did that.
There are a few of us.
Don't worry.
We don't usually say
We don't
that.
say because they don't like it.
You're not supposed to say that.
Yeah, no.
Don't mention
I can't remember if you mentioned this at all, but did you summarize anything from those last 3 links?
I didn't summarize it, no.
Okay.
Do you want me to? Or, sorry,
Well-
is that the question? Sorry.
So I just found out about this within the last 24 hours. I think there's one property separating my house from the proposed property. I'm a first-time home buyer. It was a major, biggest investment of my life. I think it's important to be transparent that there is significant potential for decrease in property values in that area. Like 10 to 20% from what I've found in my research in the past 24 hours. And I'm empathetic and sympathetic, but it's also, I can't ignore the statistics and the fact that essentially all the equity in my house potentially is just flying right out the window.
Well, I haven't read that, but I would love to, if you want to share your resources with me.
Sure, yeah.
You can email me those as well. The ones that were sent to me that, like I said, I didn't find myself, do talk about very neutral, not very much difference, and some even increasing the values of neighboring properties depending on the kind. Also, I think some of them were specific about how shelters that provide services in them have have a better chance of improving the values as opposed to overnight drop-in shelters. But that's what we've found so far.
Okay.
But I'm happy to exchange information.
I haven't read your links because I didn't have them yet. So I'll read that, and that's great. I did have one other question. Since I didn't know about this, I wasn't at the DRB meeting. I read the minutes, and was there mention of widening the road in those minutes?
Was that there, or was that another?
That was at the select board. I didn't.
Okay, maybe those were the minutes.
That was at the select board meeting, and someone
suggested.
a resident brought that up that
Okay.
was a concern.
And sidewalks and lighting.
Yeah,
and
that was
stuff?
something he suggested. It was
Okay.
suggested by a
Okay, so that's not
taxpayer.
part of the plan.
Oh, no.
Plan. Okay.
No, that's something someone suggested, and that
Yeah.
I don't know what we could do about. Personally, as an agency, I'm not sure how that even happens in a town. I don't think it would be us.
Just because that has come up, I think we have a couple of select board members. So folks, if you're a part of the select board for Hyde Park, do you mind identifying yourself just so we folks
They don't want to, Greg. They don't
Well,
want
I'm
it.
actually here as a resident, but I am on the select board too because I live right next door. So yeah,
But do we have anyone from the DRB?
I don't think anyone's like
Okay. All right, so just so folks do have questions that maybe are not specific
They
to.
don't want it. Don't put them on the spot like that.
Greg, it's a
Sure, you're up. Then just do a quick, okay.
Quick scan for hands.
Okay, so let's go, Sherry, and then we'll come up front here.
My name is Sherry Marcelino. I've worked in Lamoille County for over 18 years, working with people with severe persistent mental illness at Lamoille County Mental Health. I grew up in Craftsbury, which isn't far from here, and so my roots are here. And I think what I want to add to the conversation is that this organization is amazing, but it doesn't act alone. We've said that. They reach out to other organizations to help them with the specific care that their residents may need, or their guests. I'm speaking specifically about mental health, but we also have people that specialize in substance use disorders and physical health disorder, or not disorders, but illness. For example, we've had an increasing population of the elderly that are not suitable for shelter because their medical needs are so high. So the Lamoille Community House is contracted with people to help with that specific population. We're a phone call away. If there is an issue, a unique issue that they haven't dealt with, that they can't answer today, they have a whole team of people that are going to help them with that are invested with that. If you know me, you know I love to brag about Lamoille County. I really love bragging about it because we are unique in the state at our level of collaboration. We are really good here, and we don't take that lightly. And I feel a little emotional about some of the things that people are saying today. This is a community that's going to rally around their members, and we're not taking any of these concerns lightly. I mean, if I was a home buyer with these concerns, I would want someone to listen to me as empathetically as someone that's struggling without a home. They're all important, and we want to come up with a solution. I'm left with the question, what are the property values like in this village now, since LCH has been housed in the village? I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I think that would be really interesting to look at.
It didn't change.
No.
So
Perfect.
there's
I
other-
don't know
They're the same
that.
company.
Check. We'll go with the online. We're going to come up front here and then check to see anyone, especially anyone who hasn't had a chance to speak yet. So we'll put a 5-minute warning here. So let's check online. We'll go over here and then check back
So
with the group.
this is a question for the select board.
What did you do, Greg?
That one's on me. That was on me.
We were trying to.
I know, this says that the
I feel
select
bad.
board was not involved in the decision-making process. What, can you just, like, a little bit of it, why that was?
Yep, because it was the Development Review Board
Yeah.
approved the change of use permit
Okay,
for.
there was no reason for the select board to need to be involved in this?
No.
Somebody had asked that and I just don't know how.
Residents came to us,
Okay,
looking for our help to appeal, but legally we were not able to do that for them, so.
I just wanted to make sure that that was, okay.
I'm Angelina Beckett. I also work at Capstone. I'm a coordinated entry specialist, so I sit with the majority of the literally homeless folks that we see come in and out of the building. I am not from Lamoille County. I chose Lamoille County. And I just wanted to offer a perspective that I think sometimes gets overlooked. You know, when we bring up these conversations, it's kind of on a mass level, right? Like the extremes of both sides. But the reality is that these people are here and they've been here and they're going to remain here. And this is the nest. Like we're talking about pushing people out of the nest. We don't have it yet. So I just think that's important to think about.
Good point.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been here for 40 years.
Well said.
I bet
Check
that
around
one
here to
home
see
in
any
Lamoille County.
questions or comments.
And basically, we're just in a current appeal period, right? And as of March 15th, if nothing is appealed, it's just good to go, correct?
That's my understanding.
Question here?
Well, I didn't really have
I
a
mean, we're
question.
not.
Or comment. Or
Oh,
We're not all.
We're not gonna what?
And we're not all a danger, like, we're not out to,
Oh, I was just clarifying.
Oh, yes, no.
like, we're just not.
Okay, so I think we have the floor
Most
right
of the
here.
people are closer to me than my family now.
Thank you.
This doesn't entirely fit, but my name is Terry Look and I work at Lamoille County Mental Health Services now. In the 80s, I worked in Portland, Maine area with for Goodwill, and a new residence was debated for quite a while for a residential home for deaf adults with mental health issues, and the residents went into a little neighborhood, little cul-de-sac. Lots of people were very worried for reasons of like, I don't know what this is going to do, property value, neighborhood, safety, you know, a lot of things were raised as concerns, big debates. The house went in. I was a residential house manager there for a while. That neighborhood became the biggest advocates for this residential home, for the residents, for the community it was supporting.
the residents and the community connected in a really beautiful way. They helped each other out. They were supportive. They got it. But they didn't get it at first because it was this thing coming in. It was scary. There was a lot of unknowns. There were a lot of characterizations. These were scary people, and they weren't. And they aren't. And they became that neighborhood. I get choked up thinking about it because it was a beautiful experience. Working there, watching that happen, being part of that. It wasn't, puppies and kitties and roses all the time. There were some things that needed to, be figured out, but it was a community that came together to really support something that was really needed and valuable and really changed people's lives. And it wasn't just the people who were the residents in the home, changed the whole community's lives for the better. And I just hope that people can keep that potential available for the positivity that can come from change that may or may not look what you expect it to look like or have heard or whatever. Just, hold that, try a little kindness.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. So we're gonna check, we got
one more on Zoom.
And then one more in here, so let's go, who do we have on?
Shannon, do you want to unmute and?
Oh, let me stop sharing so everybody can see your face. Though I don't know where the volume's gonna come out of.
Yeah, I don't know either.
You need to unmute.
Try talking.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, just go ahead and we'll see if it works.
It sounds very echoey.
Now go. Figured it out.
They won't be able to hear you if you mute me.
Oh, shoot.
We could just hear them.
Yeah. It'd actually be better if it was conveyed in text because I can't record any of the audio through Zoom.
Oh.
Okay,
Sorry about that.
We'll go with the comment in the room, and then Nicole will let us know when he's got that back. So,
To this woman's response, I grew up hard, okay? But I became this goody-goody, and I understood I had no tolerance for addiction, no tolerance for people need to get off their asses and work. There's no reason anybody, you put yourself where you are. And, 90% of us, and we probably do. But there are a very big percentage of us that are learning from the mistakes or the choices that we made. And this is a stepping stone. I feel like for myself, I have some other illnesses and stuff going on to where, if somebody would have come into my community, I built a beautiful home, all that stuff. If somebody would have come in with this, and I would have been scared to death too. But now I'm scared to death here. I am scared to death here. Here? Like, just in this situation, I never expected to be where I am.
Nobody expects it.
that's right.
I had my own business, I had but in my community, like in myself, I've grown. I have grown so much of understanding different, a person, because you may use drugs or you may be an alcoholic or you may have a mental illness, doesn't make who that person is. Some people just need different steps and helping them get through, to the point where they can deal with it, And
You
so
make different choices. You can do it.
Oh, listen, I'm a fighter.
Thank you very much for sharing. I'm gonna check with Nicole here.
We're still waiting on her to write her statement or question. So, we got another one in the audience while we wait.
Okay, great, thank you.
Hi, I live on Center Road. I'm 17, and I have a lot of compassion for people, and I think that the thing that gets me anxious is so many new people coming into this place where I've grown up, and the variability. Right? Like you're saying that you can't be 100% sure that there's someone dangerous and they're going to come into this area that I've grown up in. And I know so many people, and I think that personally, I just, like, it's like anxiety inducing that there just could be so many new people, and that there's not, I think with the house that you have here, the police department is right next door, right? So something happens and it's like a 2-minute walk, but it's a 10-minute drive.
We have 6 women in one room on cots.
And it's like, someone so young, being a woman, it's a little bit unnerving. And I don't know if someone has said that yet, and I just wanted to say that, and I think that needs to be addressed.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, 21 beds is a lot of people.
Yeah, I run a lot, and so I run up and down the road, and I run all around, and 90% of the people that pass me in the car are people that I know, and I wave to them, or people I pass on the road, I wave to them, and possibly seeing someone who is under the influence of a substance, like, that is scary as a woman. That's putting me in a tough position.
Fear is a real deal.
I guess just building off of that, like when like a facility is open, is it going to be 21 people show up immediately, or is it going to be kind of like a trickle?
It'll probably be more of a trickle. Yeah. Yeah. Chelsea.
I
will say something.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. In case it's all wrapped together,
It
go
kind
ahead.
of is.
Yeah, so
It's kind
that
of
way
segues.
we
Come back and
Yeah,
get the response to make sure, and then we're gonna check to see where we got it online. Chelsea,
Okay, it's kind of a segue up from hers, because I have a teenage daughter also. But the police station is across the street, but the cops aren't sitting there. So just kind of think of that, you know, just because they're across the street from the police station, it's not manned with policemen there all the time. So I think the call out will still be about the same. And I don't know if you've read the court report recently, but we have had so many DUIs and so many accidents on Center Road the past month. So I don't even like to walk on Center Road anymore because of the current people that live on our road. So I'm just gonna kind of throw that out there.
Thank you. I didn't want to. I did.
Argument that it's dangerous already, so it doesn't matter if it's more dangerous.
Oh well, it's pretty scary.
Right.
I mean, and these people are homeless. Do you think they really have a car that they're gonna be driving?
Yeah.
Come on.
Okay, do you want to share those?
I was going to, but Sadia's distracting and confusing me.
Well, let's
Oh, okay.
Let's hear.
Let me just.
comment, and then we'll
I was gonna say almost
over to
the same stuff Chastity was gonna say. I wasn't going to point out all of the DUIs on your road because I didn't want to be that person, but I did read one of them in the police blotter this week. And I did want to say that the police response time will be like she said, they're not sitting there waiting and guarding our shelter at the moment. Like they could be patrolling in did they go to Johnson?
Yeah.
But they could be patrolling somewhere far away and still take the same amount of time. It doesn't really matter where our proximity to the station now. But I do want to recognize your fears as a woman and as a young person. And I understand that walking anywhere is scary. Like it's, especially as women.
How about as an old person? I mean, really?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Just call me, I'll come help you.
I have a scanner in my house.
But and I'm
Every single call to the yellow house that's happened, whether it be ambulance, police, I beat them there.
she gets there before anybody else.
Before every single time I beat them there. So I'm there first, and I am not that much further to the new location than I am to the current one. So I guarantee I'll beat them there this time too, every single time.
And I know it's not really a lot of comfort to say like it's already dangerous anyway. I know that doesn't bring a lot of comfort. So thank you, Chastity, for that. No, I'm just kidding.
Sorry.
But it is kind of the reality of our world is that like we're kind of what's happening. What I'm seeing happen is kind of like classifying this group with more danger, and there's not really proof of an increase of danger from this group. And if there already is danger, it's already there, and it happens in crimes and drug use and all of these things happen at every socioeconomic level. We just, as a society, tend to be more afraid of it and have more judgment of it when it's with people that are living in poverty. So I know that's not the most comforting answer. And Sherry has something to say, but also, did you have something to say? No, you said.
asked it earlier.
You asked it earlier. Sorry, I'm like bouncing. My head is bouncing around everywhere.
So I think we're
Oh,
we're gonna go. We do have that
The statement
question,
online.
and then we had Saudia, and then we come back to. And then we got here, and then Sherry. So
Okay,
here.
and
Question on that, Maya?
I wanted to let you know, I just changed settings, so if people want to speak on Zoom, I'll just mute us and then they can talk.
Okay.
If you would like to.
We did get it written, so
Okay.
Do you want to read it?
I can read it. Or
You can read it.
okay. So Shannon said, "I'm the executive director for North Central Vermont Recovery Center. Kim and team, thank you for gathering this valuable amount of information and the open communication you've offered tonight. As one of the human service agencies in the community, I'm grateful that this community house is expanding and increasing its services. I think it's important to mention that the folks needing shelter are already in our community. It's not necessarily going to be a destination for out-of-staters or other counties."
Okay, so thank you, Shannon, for sharing online. Let's go to Saudia, and then go back here, then come up here.
Yeah, Shannon actually kind of spoke to what I was going to say already. So my name is Saudia Lamoille. I don't live in Hyde Park. I do live in Lamoille County. I grew up in Lamoille County. I've been here for almost 30 years. And I'm also a person who has experienced chronic homelessness and has had to utilize several services to help me exit homelessness and get secure housing. And I just wanted to say, and I also, fun fact, I worked at the residential home that was formerly known as Clark's Residential Home, which is now known as Forest Hills. And I wanted to just point out that when we talk about vulnerable populations and behaviors that are associated with them, we had residents when I worked there that had dementia that would leave, that were violent and aggressive, that we had to tend to. So people are people, and behaviors are behaviors, regardless of what the population. And when you're looking at human behavior and who your neighbors are, they are humans with different experiences. And so the real focus is, how do we care for our neighbors and the people in our neighborhood and make sure that they are safe? Because if they are not housed and safe, where will they be? Would you feel more comfortable with them camping out behind your shed, or in your backyard, or under a pickup truck, or under a bridge? Or would you be more comfortable with them housed in a shelter, with support services, with access to care, helping them get the steps that they need to exit homelessness? Just wanted to point that out.
Thank you, Saudia. I'm going to go to Scott. Sure, got the S's all lined up here. Scott.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch with that. There's a couple of things in our life that we learn that we're afraid of: the unknown, the unseen, and change. Now, the biggest thing with those two facts, it creates that fear, and we learn from our fears, our mistakes. And with structure, change can be the best thing made for the next generation, for the next move, and the community, or for the state even. I mean, it could set the pace for the next new idea. And to have fear is not a bad thing. It just is a natural self-protection that we have lived with, have learned to adjust to. What's our first thing as a human? Curiosity. Curiosity puts us in face of fear and change, so maybe this change for the community is our next to do, because it needs to happen. Something is helping the community to come up with this idea in the first place. So change. It's going to scare a lot of people, but it can also come back with a bouquet of flowers for everybody. At the end, who knows? That unforeseen thing can be the most beautiful event.
Thank you, Scott. It's not fun to share.
I have a hard time speaking after you do such a good job. I wanted to sort of address some of the things that you were talking about, as well as some of the things, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, Jeff, that you were mentioning before. There are 4 other crisis beds / residential facilities that are specific to very vulnerable populations outside of nursing homes in Lamoille County. And they're scattered around the county. They're in different towns. But I wonder if, knowing that if there might be minutes or an avenue where you could speak to the neighbors of those facilities and see how it impacted them. Some of the homes are very new. One of them is new within just this year. 2 of them have been there longer than I've been around, so I won't tell you how long they've been around for a while. And one of them's about 7 years young. So I think just going through the process of how those homes were created and how they nurtured relationships with their neighbors and how it impacted their properties or didn't, that might be really helpful. I know one of the properties with the crisis facility that I'm thinking of was actually like a newly forming neighborhood, and they are apart. They have an avenue with, like Kim was talking about, where the neighbors actually meet with the facilities managers and talk about any issues or concerns that they may have. And I think it's been a really good relationship, and because those models work, we've been able to create more crisis beds and have more crisis facilities. So it's different organizations, but it's just a thought that it might bring you some answers and some comfort. I don't know.
Thank you. We're a little over time, but it seems like everybody seems okay. No one's rushing to get out.
This feels like maybe a good moment for us to bring things to a close. And just one last thing I want to mention. I was mentioning earlier that my connection with the community house came from my daughter and an invitation from her that I wasn't expecting, and to be honest, was a little concerned about, and resulted in us doing some overnights at St. John's Church, here at the Second Congregational Church, United Church in Johnson, the first partners who were willing to step up and try to address homelessness in our community. And so I don't want to try to say, minimize people's fears. That's what we're afraid of. That is a very individual and personal thing. But I just encourage folks. I think part of tonight is information, but part of it is invitation. And one of the ways I believe you can still volunteer and help at the shelter is to bring a meal. Mm-hmm. And so I encourage you to just consider maybe that as an opportunity, because we do have some other organizations and people you can talk to in the community. But if the concern is about Lamoille Community House, the residents and the guests who are there, the staff who are there, how this kind of looks, is an invitation to come check it out yourself. And one really sort of natural way would be, bring a meal and to share a meal with folks that is not known connection. So with that, it's gathering around food. There's something really powerful about that. So I want to say thank you all very much for coming out tonight. Thank you for just showing up. Thank you for asking questions. Thank you for sharing and being open. And this is how we'll move together and make sure that we have the right supports that we need in our community. Kim and Nicole, I want to thank you, the board members from the Lamoille Community House, the staff, the guests, and your willingness to open to the world what you're doing and what you're trying to do. So I'm going to turn it over to Kim for the final word, and then if folks are able to and want to stick around to ask any other follow-up questions, folks will be up here to respond to those. So Kim Annisberger.
I don't have some big wise closing statement or anything. I'm just very grateful that people are out here. I'm grateful for the questions and even for the concerns, because it makes us think about new things. Our history now. We're young, we're still evolving, we're always adapting, and we're flexible, and we want to have your input as we continue into our next phase and grow even more. And I mean growth more not grow size, but growth, learning, developing, and becoming what the community needs for everybody. I think that's it. So please sign up for the email list. And I don't know, don't clap. That's weird. Clap for yourselves for being here. And sign up so I can be in contact with all of you. I'm going to end this